When I was around 6 years old, I learned mathematics by myself. I teach myself algebra when I was 6 years old. I have seen attacks recently, so impressive, drive by artificial intelligence. After 2022, when the Russians they invaded Ukraine, 3 days before we saw a spark of the data wipers attacking the critical infrastructure of Ukraine and as well of Germany, because some of the components are universal components that are not only used in Ukraine, but they are used in satellites, in windmills, in energy sector for Europe. And we knew that when we will be using the first cyber weapon, it will be like the nuclear weapon.
Today's guest is someone I know in a very different chapter of life. Back then, he was working in solutions, systems, and technology. But since then, his journey has taken him across the world through Mexico, the United States, Russia, China, Australia, and New Zealand, and into conversations most of us never get anywhere near. He's spent more than 20 years working across cybersecurity, cyber intelligence, national security, critical infrastructure, cyber law, cyber resilience, and data sovereignty. He's been featured in Forbes Mexico, appeared across international media, advised on cyber risk, taught and spoken in high-level environments, and built a reputation around one uncomfortable truth. The next global crisis might not begin with bombs, soldiers, and tanks. It might begin with a click. Please welcome to the show, Israel Reyes. Israel!
Thank you, Dave. Well, let me tell you that I'm very happy to be here with you, Dave. And well, I remember when we used to work together in New Zealand a long time ago in Spark and New Zealand Telecom. And working with you was an amazing experience. I learned a lot from you. And that certainly helped me to the work that I do in Europe, in United States, and Latin America. Thank you, David, for above all, to be my friend.
You are very kind, and it's been an absolute pleasure and learning experience for me as well. I think I might be wrong, but I think I had hair back then as well.
No, you're never wrong. You're never wrong.
Israel, I want to start before the cybersecurity, before Forbes, before the international media, before the advisory work. Now, you've described yourself as a mathematician. And part of your public story points back to Mexico, education and adversary, and discovering mathematics early in life. What was that all about? How did it all start?
Well, everything starts when I was very young. When I was around 6 years old, I learned mathematics by myself. I teach myself algebra when I was 6 years old. English was not my first language, but mathematics was my first language. Thanks to my ability in mathematics, I got my first scholarship to study in the United States. That's where I came from Mexico to study in the United States. When I finished my degree in applied mathematics, computer science, and economics, I did my first piece of software when I was working for American Express. And I'm talking about 1997, when we have frame relay, when we have X.25, and we have a COBOL. So my job was very boring. But what I tried to solve was a problem of predicting the likelihood of a failure on the router devices. So what I did, I get the sys logs from the routers around the globe to create a sample size, a data set, very randomly. And I use 2 sigma to cover 95% of the normal distribution probability. So the traffic, I normalize that traffic and I map that traffic into a 2 sigma. So that was a normal behavior. So the outliers of 0.5, which is in the tails, I use discharge. Then I did a linear regression mathematical model based in the normal probability function. So I was very lucky because, number one, that software did not have any good use. Because when I presented, they say, Israel, we don't worry. We don't want to predict the probability of failure because we have money enough. If we need to replace a router, we just send another router. We don't want to know when it's gonna fail. When it fails, we send another one. But very lucky, a second conversation emerged from that first conversation. And one person which used to work for military and which has a connections with the law enforcement agencies, so he saw the software and he told me, Israel, if you give me not the normal behavior, but the abnormal behavior analysis of details of that data that you disqualified, that is more interesting for money laundering, for financial intelligence. So I can take that software and present it to the FBI, Financial Crime Division. And that was a tipping point in my personal career and professional, because that took me to the next level, to the point where I used to work for Department of Defense, for the signal battalions, for solutions architect, and the rest is story, as you know. He's my youngest son.
How you going, big guy?
Say hello. David is from the UK. He's a British.
How's his golf game?
Oh, he got the signature from Nelly Corda. She won the LGPA here in Houston and Chevron Open. So she signed to Ivan his hat. Now he needs to become a champion in PGA.
There's a line in your story that really stands out to me, Israel. Now, you've lived and worked across the United States, Russia, China, New Zealand, Australia, and you've said Russia understood very early that cyberspace would become a space of influence. What did living in those countries teach you about power, control, and technology that you could never have learned from the textbooks?
Yeah, I think one of my best experience happened in China and happened in Russia. As you know, I speak fluently Russian and I also speak fluently Mandarin. The difference compared to many other countries is that they knew that cyberspace and cyber weapons in somehow is the fundamental base of asymmetric warfare. And with that asymmetric warfare is also the definition of the fifth generation warfare. Who controls the cyberspace controls everything else, because cyberspace has connection with cyber, with physical, with space, with maritime, with land, with airspace. Every domain has been touched by the cyberspace. Nevertheless, it's the most critical and the most important. Russians, Chinese, Iranians, North Koreans, they put a lot of effort in those cyber operations. As you know, APT, Advanced Persistent Threats, are heavily mining the cyberspace. GPS spoofing, confidentiality of the data, of the critical infrastructure, integrity of the data, and availability of that data. We talk about Colonial Pipe. We talk about what happened with Stuxnet, right? A very well cyber weapon and a very well military APT cyber operation. It can look like it was a technological failure, but it wasn't. It was a cyber attack. And we have seen plenty of those ones. We have seen this Striker here in the United States, because APT from Iran, the 9th of May, we have the alert from FBI Cyber Division about what was going on with Iranians in penetrating critical infrastructure in the United States and CrowdStrike, and I can keep going and going and going and going. The battlefield right now is the cyberspace. It's not really the physical space, it's the cyber.
So would we say now that countries actually have cyber divisions, i.e. specialist units that are set up to infiltrate other countries? And if they are infiltrating other countries in that way, hacking them, so to speak, What are they hacking them for? Are they trying to get data, information from them for plans? Are they trying to take over their infrastructure in some way, or as we might have seen in the Ukraine, where they take down critical infrastructure? Or is there a multi-path of what they're looking to do?
This is a non-homogeneous equation. This is very complex, but everything you said, you are correct. Number one is in somehow to create a deterrence, right? So when one unit, the cyber unit, the military operations against another country, penetrate critical infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, at some level they can leverage that to deterrence strategy. So if you act against me, I have the capability to stop your power grid, right? So it's a deterrence. But on the other hand, nevertheless, they also looking to have command and control. Like command and control, it is so important because you don't need to have a missile, but if you have the command and control of your enemy, missile launch platform, you can use it in your favor, right? If you don't have a hypersonic missile, but you successfully can do spoofing of the GPS, you can use it like if it was yours, right? And you invest less time, less money, less resources, but you can spoof the GPS satellite communications between the land and the space, obviously through the cyberspace.
So, since the recent war has kicked off with Iran, has there been an increased number of attacks which have either been presented at the United States or vice versa since the wars began? Are we starting to see that, and they are trying to take over America's systems?
Absolutely, David. It reminds me when we used to work with the Department of Defense, when we were in Signals Battalion. We start to see how the cyber attacks were increasing, but at very slow rate. But after 2022, when the Russians they invaded Ukraine, 3 days before we saw a spark of the data wipers attacking the critical infrastructure of Ukraine and as well of Germany, because some of the components are universal components that are not only used in Ukraine, but they are used in satellites, in windmills, in energy sector for Europe, like Siemens. When we have the Stuxnet, right? The Stuxnet penetrate the Siemens systems globally, but it was designed to trigger a specific domain, and that domain was Iran in this specific case in 2010. And we knew that when we will be using the first cyber weapon, it will be like the nuclear weapon. Everyone will develop a cyber weapon. And is where is the armed race right now in the cyberspace. If we have no treaty, we have no legislation, we have not international agreements, and that expose us to a higher risk.
So, what's the predictions based on the utilization of AI within these components? Because previously we were looking at Iran and America. Let's use them as a prime example. It would be individuals as to who had the best techs, who had the best teams, who had the ability to attack and defend the areas that they were covering. But now we're not looking at those individuals anymore. AI is starting to take over, and the ability to attack multiple targets at once faster than we ever could is happening.
That's amazing because artificial intelligence is a change game completely. You know, right now we have this operation with Iran and Israel and United States, and we are publicly accepting that we're using artificial intelligence for the decision makers, right? One of the very good advantage of artificial intelligence is like, and it reminds me our times when we were in defense. Back then, we can have different scenarios and we can do the probabilistic analysis in different scenarios to see what strategy you're going to take. But we were limited in time, right? Today, with artificial intelligence, you can create Monte Carlo simulations and you can create thousands thousands of scenarios, and you can calculate what is the most likelihood probability of a specific scenario to become real. And that is the difference between knowing artificial intelligence and using artificial intelligence. And who use artificial intelligence will take decisions faster and more strategically, because your decisions will be in milliseconds. So we need to adjust to use artificial intelligence for defense, for deterrence, and for development of countered attacks or offensive or defensive operations. That's a reality.
Where does it end?
I don't think it has an end. I really don't, because we compare back to 2010, back to 2000, we see this exponential growth in attacks, in development, cyber commands. Right? We are in a different world, and we need to protect our young generations, our kids. Remember, in this asymmetric warfare, the civilian infrastructure are the military targets now.
I did a little research on them. They're a logistics.
Because they have the biggest impact?
The biggest impact, absolutely. And it's how you can dominate the other country. If you successful disrupt their civilian infrastructure.
I think that's a really interesting point, because if you look at warfare which has been based on history and the past, the generalistic way that they would go about it would be to attack each other's military, because once the military was eliminated, the army could then proceed forward and take over the country, the area, whatever it may be. However, the warfare has changed in terms of the grounds that now they don't attack the military, they attack the people who are providing food, environmental help, who are providing technology, energy, which then has the knock-on effect back to the military from that. And we've also changed from people to people fighting to, as we've just said, cybersecurity, to hack these targets and to be able to take them out in ways we've never seen before.
Exactly, Dave. And also we have information warfare and psychological warfare, operations, right? Because your target in fifth generation warfare is not your counterpart, military. No, you want to produce influence in the country or the system that you wanted to attack, right? That's why we have this information warfare. That's why we have psychological operations, right? And that's why we don't target military anymore. We target those critical assets that will change the perception and the reality of that people, right? That's why we need to be protected as well. We need to think, and this is what I like about my work. I always say, I'm very lucky to have a dream job, is to think like a really bad person, but be a really good person protecting the community, protecting the country, to protecting my family, right? But we need to have that mindset to be able to understand how bad actors can act against civilian infrastructure and how we can protect that infrastructure. Because it's not about if, it's about when. And when happen, we must be prepared.
Yes. So I'm going to read some stats that I've been looking at recently. So the total estimated annual cybersecurity cost is 10.5 trillion US dollars per year.
Yes.
So
indeed.
that is more than the economy of some small countries.
Absolutely, Dave.
The FBI Internet Crime Report. So the United States reported losses of 16 billion US dollars through cybersecurity related crimes in 2025. This is an insane amount of money for countries like the United States to be hit with. And these figures are just going up in terms of the impact of what's happening and the amount being invested to be able to fight back and to be able to counter that kind of impact. I think IBM's global data report, the average cost of a data breach is 4.4 million United US dollars.
Absolutely, Dave. And those numbers will get worse before they get better. Like if you compare in the manufacture, if you compare in the power grid, 1 hour of no production, 1 day of no operation, it costs a lot of money, not only in revenue and profit, but also the interdependencies that you have. So the real cost of cyber attack and disruption is not only the revenue that you lost per hour, it's all the legal liabilities that you have because of that, the damage to the environment, the damage to your reputation and credibility, the stock value market, and it's many, many laws. So that's why the advanced persistent threat or malicious actors, they focus in that part, because if they can damage your financial continuity, your economic success, they will supersede above you.
So when I mean, there's various scales we're talking about here. Let's move away from war and the impact of that. Let's go into what you were just suggesting there with in terms of business. So for many of the big businesses out there, they've got cybersecurity, they've got SOCs and NOCs, Network Operations Center, Security Operations Center, which has individuals and teams specialized in understanding threats and protecting them. However, smaller businesses within any part of the world necessarily can't afford to do that. It costs a lot of money to invest and to be able to develop. So what would be the recommendation for small businesses, either businesses starting out or sub 100 people, where they can't afford that security kind of representation around them? What would you recommend that they start doing?
So this applies also for small economies. So they need to use this as a service, because obviously you have no resources, economic or financial resources, to have your SOC or to have your own workforce. But what you can do is to understand your risk distribution, understand your processes, to evaluate how do you can engage with a service provider so that you can transfer that risk into your provider. So you get those service as a service. So then you have no ownership of the assets, but you transfer as a capex, as a capital expenditure. And that will protect you, because that provider is not only provider to you, but provider to many. And it's when these small actors can get a lot of benefit and they get a return on invested capital. That is the solutions to go. Because let's face it, if you are a small economy, if you are a small, medium business, you cannot afford to have your SOC. You cannot afford to have experts. An expert in cybersecurity and operational technology in the United States, it costs $550 per hour. So
Wow.
those businesses, they cannot afford to pay hundreds of hours of these specialists. They are very highly skilled and specialized. But what they can afford is to pay another company as a service. I only need 2-3 hours. I only need this, and then protect me for the incident response when that happens, or give me the security information management system, right? And even use artificial intelligence to early detection of potential cyber attack, and they can be prepared. That is the good stuff, right? So you don't have to
Yes.
reinvent the wheel. You can just use what resources do you have already.
Yep. And also, I'd say there's a number of basics that people need to be aware of in terms of, I mean, phishing's a key one. So when we talk about phishing, what we potentially mean is someone who sends an email through, makes a telephone call through, and tries to get you to click on a link or make a response to something that they're sending you, which then will hopefully give them access to your network through them being able to hack into your computer. So that would be an easy one that people need to be more vigilant and tested on constantly.
Hey, brother, you seriously, I wanted to frame it in a good way, Dave. I have seen attacks recently so impressive, drive by artificial intelligence. I will tell you, a company that I know this company. Some bad actor create an artificial intelligence. He knows the name of a key person in the company in the IT support. The artificial intelligence recognize who is the name of that person because the data mining in LinkedIn. So they know David is the IT manager and Bob is the IT technician. They pitch in the people inside the company by sending an audio call saying, hey, this is Dave. I need your access just for a few minutes to do an upgrade in your computer. Just click this link and give okay to this access. Boom. The voice, the name, the role, it match. Guess what? You think you are talking to Israel, but maybe it's not Israel. And you see it. You see it. Well, but I'm talking to him. It's his voice, it's his face, it's his role, but it may be not. That is the latest cyber attacks using artificial intelligence for social engineering and phishing attacks. And the rate of success of this attack is above 90%. Just like that.
But what's the counter to that? I mean, what obviously I would say that if anyone calls you up and asks you to provide them access to your computer, that would be a questionable item in the first instance. But I could understand if someone you know within your company who's respected for their role and they are the IT person, that would be, I can fully understand that 90% of people would let them in. How do we stop that? How do people...
Education and training. Top table exercises, right? Top table exercises. Because I will tell you this. Okay, you got this code. You know, Israel is the IT guy that always helped me here. I have a problem. I call him, right? Suddenly he called me back, right? He says, Israel, David, we need to do this upgrade. Please go to this link and do this and this and this. You hear my voice or you can see my video and you have no doubts about that, right? Okay. But what you have to do is just in the education program is to hang up that call and then you call back to Israel. Hey, Israel, did you just call me? No, it was not me. No, I swear it was your voice. It was your video. It was you, right? That is the only way to prevent. But if they catch you in the morning or on Friday when you are very tired, the likelihood increase. Very interesting. In the analysis that we have done, we noticed that these bad actors, they tend to attack on Monday or on Wednesday, right? Monday, early time when you are coming from the weekend, you're not quite fresh, and then boom, and in the morning, in the early hours, right? It's very interesting how do they do. Ransomware attacks, they came in on Wednesday, on Monday, because they put more psychological stress to the people in the company. Because if they attack you on Friday, you have the weekend to recover, right? They don't want to give you time to recover. They wanted to hit you on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday. And most likely when you have a paid role, when you really need to be up. And they will get you when you less expect it.
No. So I want to do it.
I agree. I've also seen an increase in cybersecurity attacks on public holidays or the day before a public holiday, Christmas especially, because generally most companies have what's called a skeleton crew. That's where they reduce the amount of people that are on at that time to be able to watch things because they're expected to be able to be with their families through that period. But the hackers are well aware that they've got reduced capabilities during that time. And as such, they target through these public holidays because they've got less defenses.
And now they can impersonate your loved ones. They can impersonate your family ones. Deep fakes. It's so easy to create those ones. I mean, that artificial intelligence is free.
I don't know what the answer. I agree for a business point to point, being able to call back and say, hang on. I think one of the key things they're playing with here, and I think it's going to get worse, is the emotive nature of human beings, especially with loved ones, with family, calling through and saying, hey, I've received texts from numerous random numbers advising that my daughter's lost her phone, just got this phone. Can you send me some money because I'm stuck? And my daughter doesn't have a phone. She's too young. So I'm well aware that I know it's a hack and someone's just trying to scam me. A lot of people out there don't, and they're beaten by the emotiveness. And like you say, on a Friday, they're tired. Oh my God, another phone. Maybe they lost it a couple of weeks earlier. And before you know it, they're out of pocket.
But David, now imagine the scary thing. You get a video in your phone. Apparently, it's your daughter send you a video. Hey, Dad, I'm stuck here. I need some money. This is a new phone. It is, and you see, yeah, it's she. It's her voice. See the video, right? That is where it gets scary.
Is there any detection software out there, or is there anything being created? Because I know it's going to get harder and harder as we improve with AI and it gets better and better for mimicking voice traits, various things. But at the start, there must be something to say, well, hang on, your daughter always says like at the end of a sentence, and they're not saying like, so I'd be aware of this.
Yes, exactly. Or having a comment pattern, like a secret keyword, like a passcode, if you are in trouble, when you call me from a new number because if you lost your phone, you have to say this passcode. The house is red or the house is white. It's a code that only you and your family knows. And if they say yes, well, but if they have been compromised by artificial intelligence can, is that your passcode, right? So it is tricky. I mean, it is really tricky. Now, just to respond to your question, the problem is that it's no return on investment for companies that try to do the good things. Let's face it. If you are a Meta, if you are TikTok, if you are these companies, you really you want to capitalize on what gives you money, right? They delegate this not in a good way to the people. You deal with it, you fix it with it, you educate yourself, right? But I really do believe that this is a shared responsibility between us as a users, the owners of technology, the providers like the telecommunications companies, and also the owners and the developers. Only working together we can do it, because Meta, telecommunications company, they won't invest billions of dollars and try to fix this problem, right?
It's not in their interest.
It's not in their interest. It's the truth. Let's face it. But in ethical and in a shared responsibility, we can work together and we can ban this when it's. I mean, if it's an artificial intelligence manipulation content, let's go to put a marker that then we know this is modified with artificial intelligence, right? I mean,
Yes.
deepfakes are so good nowadays, right? It's impressive.
That's the world. Yeah, it is. And it's scary because now we are truly separating. And I think this is a problem we've started to see over the last 5 years. What is real versus what is created? We're getting there with videos, deepfakes, and stories like that. But I think we're going to come up to a real point in existence where no one knows. And then it's hard to decipher what the true truth is in any situation.
I think in 10 years from now, 99% of the content in internet will be fake and only 1% will be real. And it depends how do you define that. Like now, every picture has been modified with filters, with artificial intelligence, right? Every picture. So what's real and what's not real, right? And as I say, the content nowadays, the fake content is going high and the real content is going low. And also it has economic behavior behind, because that fake content is more appealing to the audience, right? It grabs your attention, right?
Yes.
And it's very difficult for us to make a proper judgment, right? Because you don't know what is real. You know, even in the news, you don't know what is a fake news, what is a real news. And we're confused because you have so much information that you have no time to validate the information. And it's also part of the information warfare and psychological operations, right? So there's a lot of work for government, for companies, and for users to understand that this is becoming a problem. In the past, it was a part of the solution, but now it's part of the problem.
Yes. And I don't know where that goes. I don't know what the end is. I don't know how much investment you can do, because when your failure point for any company is humans, for any reason, they're always going to fail against what they believe is correct or accurate, or people you're speaking to. So
Indeed.
I think the key takeaway there for anyone watching from an individual perspective, from a company perspective, is if someone calls you and asks you to do something, call them back. Simple thing. Call them back on the number you know that they answer to. Call them back on the company directory. Make sure that you check what they're doing. Don't ever do anything that it says on an email, and don't ever believe an email, because 90% are false.
Even the email, the corporate email, can be compromised. So you can get a real email address from a compromised Exchange server, and you can say, well, this is david.benson.com. Is a real email. Can be compromised. As you said, place the call.
I think another topic you hit when you were talking earlier was social engineering. Now, for those who don't know what social engineering is, it's acting more than anything else. It's someone impersonating someone else for reasons to be able to get into your company in some way. A lot of people call up call centers, desks, pretending to be people that they're not, to try and find a way in. There's people who go to companies and pretend to be lift operators or something such as, to gain access into the company. Is social engineering still such a prevalent problem? Because I can imagine that the people who did it previously have a lot more ease getting into companies remotely these days.
Yeah. Social engineering always will be the most successful attack because we're humans. We're the human ware. If the human doesn't click, it's going to be difficult because technology is centric to us, and human is the fact, is the centric, right? So social engineering is, and it will be prevalent.
I think it's quite intimidating for a lot of people as well, because if you see someone in your office who you don't know and you don't believe is normally there, to be able to have that brave conversation and say, "Can I see your ID? Who are you? Who are you here to see?" It sounds simple. You see it in all the basic videos, just ask. But it's really hard to put yourself out to be able to have that conversation. And it doesn't matter if you're a small frame person or a large frame person. It doesn't matter, anything to do with that. It's still an intimidating thing to be able to feel empowered to say that.
Because humans, we are emotional.
Correct.
We're not logical. We're not logical. We're emotional.
Yes. Yeah. Even me, I've been in that situation many a time where I've seen lots of people and I don't know who they are, but to go up to them is intimidating. And I can say that I wouldn't always do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you work in a big firm, so, you see thousands of people every day and you don't know who they are. But yeah, it's a human-centric technology, and that's why social engineering will be prevalent vector of attack.
So, what's your top tips to stay safe, Israel? What's your top recommendations?
Well, my top recommendation is like be cautious, don't trust what you see, what you hear, and you have to verify it, as you say. That's number one. Number two is like we need to educate ourselves. We need to be educated, digital, because with all these new technologies and new methodologies, we need to understand, right? Because I mean, if you create a fake video and you show to my grandmother, which is 80 years old, she never will believe that it's fake. She will not believe, right? Because it's
Yes.
a big gap of knowledge. So we need to be learning continuously, and we need to share this knowledge with our family members. Like in your case, my case, we have fathers, we have young kids. The world that they will face, that will be more complex than the world that you and I will face. But we need, starting now, to educate them. Like my kids don't have social media until they have the proper age to make the proper judgments, right? Because they, otherwise they're gonna be manipulated by all these deep fake videos. They will be confused, and they can have bad behavior, adversarial behavior to their mental health and to your physical health, their physical health. So we need to spend time with our loved ones, educate them. We depend on the cyberspace. We live in the cyberspace. Look at that. I'm in Houston, Texas, and you are in New Zealand. We are thousands of miles away, kilometers away, but we are here in the cyberspace. So we need to educate our community to become stronger, to become more wise, to become more profitable, to become better people for society.
Solid advice. And if anyone wants to get hold of you in the future, Israel, we will put your details in the comments below so they can go down and get those details and get in touch. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. I seriously want to recognize um, the knowledge that I got from you when we used to work together. You were a role model to me, and I mean it. I mean it. When we worked together many years ago as a solutions architects and so on. So thank you for being my friend, my colleague. I learned a lot from you, and those things make me who I am today. I feel lucky. I feel that I'm being successful, and I'm delighted. Thank you, Dave, for everything. I hope to work together with you in the near future.